In the kingdom of Nakmar, the cruel Queen Bavorda learns of a prophecy that her reign will end with the birth of a child. Because of this, she orders the capture of all pregnant women in the kingdom and that their babies be eliminated at birth. One of the prisoners gives birth to a girl who has the royal mark on her arm and is destined to become a princess. Desperate, the child's mother asks Ethna, one of the midwives, to spare her daughter. And even though it goes against the queen's orders, she agrees and takes the child away hidden in a basket. Shortly thereafter, Queen Bavmorda appears in the prison and goes to see the prisoner, only to discover that her baby has been taken. Furious, she orders the child's mother to be eliminated and sends her daughter, Sorka, to bring the baby back. Days pass and Ethna walks through mountains of ice and forests, looking for a safe place for the baby. Suddenly, she hears barking in the distance and sees two Nakmar dogs approaching, wild creatures sent by the queen. Ethna flees and finds a small raft on the lake, where she leaves the baby and sends it away. Unfortunately, the midwife is attacked by the dogs and does not survive. But she manages to save the child, who continues through the forest. Shortly after, the baby is found by Ranan and Mims, two Nelwyn children who are small residents of a village in the forest. They quickly go to tell their father, the farmer Willow Ugud, who at first is against the idea of adopting a baby from the giant people known as Daikini. However, his wife Ka sympathizes with the child and decides to take her in, even against her husband's wishes. Gradually, Willow becomes attached to the baby, and even though he knows it is against the village rules, he decides to take care of her. The next morning, Willow takes his children to a village festival where the great wizard Alwyn will choose a new apprentice. This has always been Willow's dream, and he takes the test. But like the other candidates, he fails and is not chosen as an apprentice. The festival continues until one of Nagmar's dogs invades the village in search of the missing child. The creature begins to invade houses in search of the baby until a group of Nelwyn warriors, led by Vankar, appear to defend the village. Amidst a fierce battle, Vankar manages to eliminate the monster, and the warriors realize that it was after something. Aldwin then gathers all the villagers to seek answers, and Willow appears, bringing with him the baby he found in the forest. He believes that the monsters were after her, so Aldwin decides that she should be taken back to her people safely. Noticing that Willow cares about the child, the wizard puts him in charge of the mission along with his best friend Mygosh Vonner and the village mayor Burgle. With the group assembled, it is time to set off on their journey, and Aldwin gives Willow some magic acorns. When in danger, he need only throw them, and the acorns will turn anything they touch to stone. In addition, he tells Willow that he sees in him the potential to become a great wizard. However, he still needs to learn to trust himself, as this is the secret to being able to wield magic. Finally, Willow says goodbye to his family and sets off on his journey to the kingdom of the Daikini. Meanwhile, Sorka tells her mother that she has not been able to find the lost child. So the queen orders her best warrior, General Kale, to accompany her daughter in the search for the baby. The next morning, Willow and his group continue their journey when they find the crossroads leading to the kingdom of the Daikini. Once there, Willow is startled when he is grabbed by a man named Mad Mardigan, who is trapped in a cage of crows. The little farmer manages to free himself, and upon seeing one of the big men up close, Burgle advises the group to leave the baby with him and return home. Willow, however, is against the idea as he does not trust the prisoner to stay with the child. Even so, Burgale manages to convince Vonner and the other warriors, with everyone leaving except Mygosh, who stays by his friend's side. The two then set up camp and wait for some Diani to appear, but find no one throughout the night. At dawn, Mad Mardigan is tired of being in the cage and asks the two Nelwyns to give him something to drink. Feeling sorry for the man, Willow gives him some water, but ends up dropping the cup when he sees hundreds of knights approaching. Among them is Eric, Mad Mardigan's friend and commander of the armies of Galador. He warns that he is returning to his kingdom, as they have been attacked by Queen Bavort's men and need to stop her as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Mad Mardigan asks his friend to release him, but Eric refuses as he was arrested after an attempted robbery. In addition, Mad Mardigan is known for swearing allegiance only to himself, and he left his position as a knight to become a mercenary. The commander then leaves with his army, and Willow asks one of them to take the child, but they all refuse. Alone and without help, Mad Mardigan makes a deal with Willow, promising to take and care for the child in exchange for his freedom. Even though he doesn't think it's a good idea, Willow accepts and releases Mad Mardigan from his prison. Keeping his word, the knight takes the child and heads to Galador, promising to protect her with his life. After that, Willow and Mygosh make their way back to the village, but the farmer is worried about whether the baby will be okay. However, upon entering the forest, he hears the child crying, who has been captured by tiny creatures known as brownies. Willow and Mygosh try to get the child back, but end up falling into a trap set by the brownies and are knocked unconscious. Minutes later, the two wake up in the middle of the forest with their arms and legs tied, and Franine, the leader of the brownies, is about to attack them. However, he is stopped by Chirandria, a forest fairy, who tells Willow about his mission to save the baby. She also reveals that the child named Allura has chosen him as her guardian, and he must take her to the kingdom of Tur, as where a kind-hearted king and queen live. To do this, Willow must deliver his wand to a sorceress named Finn Rosiel, as she will guide him to this kingdom. Willow accepts the mission, and the next morning he asks Mygosh to return to the village while he sets off in search of Rosiel along with Frang and his friend Rule. The two brownies guide Willow through the forest until they find a tavern. The little Neen enters and asks for some milk to give to Allura, but a fight breaks out and Willow tries to leave, accidentally entering a secret passage in the tavern. There he finds a young woman next to Mad Mardigon dressed as a woman, so that her husband won't find out about them. Upon seeing the man, Willow blames him for letting the child be captured, but the argument is interrupted when Sorsa and her soldiers invade the place. Upon seeing the young princess, Mad Mardigon falls in love at first sight, but Sorsa sees him with the baby in his arms and asks if it is his daughter. The man tries to maintain his disguise, but Sorsa discovers the deception and orders her men to capture the child. Thanks to his skill, Mad Mardigon manages to escape the soldiers, and with the baby in his arms, he jumps onto a wagon. Willow follows him along with Frang and Rule, and the group flees down the road pursued by Sorsa's soldiers. A chase ensues, and the soldiers begin jumping on the wagon, forcing Mad Mardigon to let go of the reins and fight them off. The horses run uncontrollably down the road, and Willow rushes to guide them, but the weight of the soldiers causes the rear wheels to be destroyed. Because of this, Mad Mardigon and one of the soldiers slip off the wagon and hold on as they are dragged along the ground. Rule and Frang then use their axes to cut the rope from a barrel, knocking it over onto the soldier, who falls straight onto the road. The chase continues and more soldiers appear in a carriage, throwing iron stars at the group. In response, Mad Mardigon takes control of the reins and advances at full speed, picking up a flail that one of the soldiers dropped. Spinning the weapon, he manages to hit the enemy, knocking him to the ground, while the other loses control of the carriage and is thrown away. After this confrontation, Mad Mardigon decides to leave, but Willow asks for his help in finding the sorceress who can save Allura. Concerned about the child, Mad Mardigon agrees and accompanies the group for the rest of the way until they find the island where Rosiel is. Willow thanks the knight for his help and says goodbye, leaving Allura with Rule and Frang while he goes by boat to the island. Once there, he encounters a talking opossum who reveals herself to be Rosiel, transformed by the curse cast by the queen. To return to her normal state, Willow must learn to use Cheryl Andrea's wand and cast a counter spell. Even though he doesn't know how to use it, the little no one takes Rosiel back to the coast, but the group finds themselves surrounded by Sorsa's soldiers. The princess orders the soldiers to take everyone back to Nakmur as prisoners, unaware that Rule and Frang have been left behind. After a long journey, Sorka and her men rest at a camp, leaving the prisoners in cages. At dusk, Rosiel tells Willow that he needs to use the wand and return it to normal. But for the spell to work, he needs 3 drops of his blood. She then bites Willow's finger and tells him to perform the magic, but when he tries to cast the counter spell, he ends up turning Rosiel into a crow. All hope seems lost, but then Rule and Frang appear to save them. Using his spear, Frangen tries to open the cage lock, but Mad Mardigon loses his patience and tries to do it himself. Rule becomes enraged and strikes the man with his weapon containing the magical love powder, which puts the knight into a kind of hypnosis. Finally, the duo frees the group, and Willow along with Mad Mardigon search for the tent where Allura is hiding. They finally find her, and the knight sneaks in to get her, but he is stunned to see Sorka sleeping in the bed next to her. Because of the magic powder, the man goes towards the princess, who wakes up holding a dagger. She orders the madman to surrender. But instead of attacking, Mad Mardigon cannot control himself and declares his love for her. For a moment, Sorka seems to believe the knight's words and shows that she feels the same way about him. However, one of the soldiers sees Willow trying to escape with Allura and captures him with the princess, believing that everything Mad Mardigon said was a lie. She then orders everyone to be captured, but Mad Mardigon takes his sword, kisses Sorka, and cuts the wooden support, causing the tent to collapse. Thanks to this, Willow manages to escape with Allura, and the knight leaves the tent, defying the soldiers who advance toward him. Mad Mardigon demonstrates great skill with the sword, defeating his opponents one after another with quick blows. Willow is impressed, but there is no time to waste, and the knight orders him to climb onto the shield with the two sliding down the huge ice mountain. After a long journey, they find a village, but soon after, General Kale and his men appear following their tracks. Willow and Mad Mardigan rush to take Honora to safety and find the basement of a cabin where they encounter Eric and his men. Mad Mardigan confronts him for abandoning him, but the commander warns that he saved his life as almost all of his men were eliminated in battle. The discussion is interrupted when the soldiers begin to invade the cabins along with Sorka. Shortly thereafter, the princess finds the entrance to the basement, but is surprised by Mad Mardigan, who holds her at dagger point. Now that the princess has been taken prisoner, the group decides to take her with them to Tur as Sleen to ensure safe passage to the kingdom. Eric agrees to help, and when Mad Mardigan and Willow try to escape, the commander calls his men to delay Kale and his soldiers. After passing through the snowy mountains, the group encounters a maze of rocks, but thanks to Raziel's help, they manage to find the right path. Mad Mardigan takes the princess on his horse, but at the first opportunity, Sorka strikes the man and manages to escape. The knight tries to stop her, but Raziel warns that Kale and his men are coming, forcing the group to continue their journey. After another day of travel, they finally find the kingdom of Tur as Sleen. But all the residents have been imprisoned in ice by the queen's magic. As if that weren't bad enough, Mad Mardigan ends up stepping in waste that appears to have been left by trolls. Now their only chance is for Willow to transform Raziel back into a human. She then asks the Nelwyn to use his wand again, but when he casts the counter spell, Willow ends up turning Raziel into a lamb. Meanwhile, Mad Mardigan goes in search of the kingdom's weapons and finds several swords, shields, and crossbows, music, as well as a suit of knight's armor. After putting it on and grabbing the weapons, Mad Mardigan goes to Willow when he sees Kale and his army approaching the gates. The knight then uses his strength to close the entrance and immediately begins setting traps throughout the area. At the same time, Kale orders his men to cut down a tree and use its trunk as a battering ram to break down the gates. With the enemy soldiers approaching, Willow rushes to take Allura to safety, but ends up encountering a pair of trolls. With his wand in hand, the Nelwyn tries to cast a spell, but ends up transforming the troll into a hideous creature and kicks it toward the lake. Finally, Kale's soldiers invade the castle, but Mad Mardigan uses a barrel as protection and fires at the enemy soldiers with his crossbow. After using up all his arrows, the warrior stands up to face the army alone, but all of Kale's soldiers begin to retreat. Looking back, the warrior realizes that Willow's magic has transformed the troll into a giant two-headed monster that breathes fire. Now, Mad Mardigan and Kale's army fight each other, while also having to stop the enormous creature. Meanwhile, Willow tries to get Allura to safety in the tower, but is attacked by a second troll. The Nelwyn tries to escape across the bridge, but the giant monster shoots a burst of fire, blocking Willow's path. He then tries to stop the troll with one of the magic acorns, but ends up dropping one of them on the bridge, turning the wood into stone. Because of this, when the troll attacks Willow, they both end up sinking into the petrified part of the bridge and are left hanging. Fortunately, Willow manages to climb back up while the monster catches the troll and devour it with its two heads. Despite this, another troll appears to face Willow, and he screams for help. Seeing Willow in danger, Mad Mardigan climbs onto one of the catapults and throws himself toward the bridge, landing on top of the troll. Willow and Mad Mardigan thank him for his help, and the knight gives him a sword so he can defend himself. After that, Mad Mardigan jumps off the bridge toward the giant monster and strikes its neck with his sword. The monster writhes in pain and knocks down the warrior, who falls right next to Sorka. Instead of attacking him, the princess is amazed by the knight's courage, and without hesitation, she kisses him. However, the monster is still alive and tries to shoot another burst of fire at the couple. But the sword stuck in its throat blocks the flame, causing an explosion that destroys it from the inside out. Finally, the monster is defeated, but Kale leaves the castle in search of the child. At the same time, on the other side of the gates, Eric appears. With the help of Frang and Rule, he has managed to locate Mad Mardigan and sets off with his army to help him. The fight intensifies, and in the castle tower, more soldiers appear and try to attack Willow. With his sword, he manages to take down the men and protect Allura. But Kale appears shortly after and captures the baby. With his mission accomplished, he orders his men to face Eric and his army while he flees with the child to the queen. Willow despairs when he sees Allura being taken away and joins Mad Mardigan, who faces the rest of the soldiers with Sorsa's help. After the battle, the Nelwyn believes there is no way to save Allura. But Mad Mardigan promises that they will ride together to the queen's palace. Far away, Kale returns to the kingdom of Nagmar and delivers the baby to the queen, who prepares to begin the evil ritual. She intends to imprison the child in the realm of oblivion so that she can continue her reign forever. Shortly thereafter, Willow and his friends appear in front of the castle. But when they see the gates closed, they decide to camp and devise a plan to invade the place. When night falls, the group waits for the moment to attack until Queen Bavorda appears on top of the wall. Upon discovering her daughter's betrayal, the sorceress invokes a powerful spell and begins to turn everyone into pigs. Thanks to the power of his wand, Willow is not affected by the curse, but Rosiel tells him that she needs to return to human form so that she can save the others. Willow then tries the counter spell again, but Rosiel begins to transform into various types of animals. Even so, Willow does not give up, and using all his determination, he manages to cast the correct spell, and Rosiel returns to his normal state. Now, she orders the Nelwyn to bring everyone to her tent, and with her wand, she turns them human once again. Now that everyone is back to normal, Rosiel casts a protective spell so that the queen cannot confront them again. Still, they need to think of a way to break into the castle as soon as possible, as Queen Bavmorda has already begun the ritual to imprison Alora's soul. Eric suspects that there is no way to break down the gates from the outside and that the whole mission has been futile. However, Willow comes up with a risky plan, but if all goes well, they will be able to invade the castle and rescue Alora. At dawn, Kale goes to check on the rival army's camp, but the entire place has been destroyed, leaving only Willow and Rosiel. Even so, the two challenge the queen to a confrontation, and the general orders his men to capture them and settle the matter. However, as soon as the gates are opened, Willow takes his staff and beats a drum with Mad Mardigon and the soldiers coming out of their hiding places. The plan works, and they manage to pass through the open gates, starting the final battle against Queen Baborda's armies. Meanwhile, Sorka takes Willow and Raziel through a secret passageway, and they arrive at the queen's bedroom. Once there, Sorka orders her to stop the ritual, but Baborda orders her men to arrest the traitor. With her sword, Sorka easily defeats them and advances on her mother, but Baborda stops her with her levitation magic. Soon after, she pushes her daughter against a spiked fence, but Raziel stops her using her wand to save Sorka. With the princess out of the way, the queen challenges the sorceress to a magical duel. Despite Baborda's power, Raziel gets the upper hand and manages to knock her down with her powers. However, the queen knocks her down with a surprise attack, causing Raziel to drop her wand. The two sorceresses then fight over it, but end up casting several spells around the room, putting Alora's life in danger. Willow then rushes to rescue her, but one of the spells brings a table to life, blocking the Nelwyn's path. Outside, the battle continues, and Eric tries to face General Kale alone, but his opponent is more skilled and begins to strike him. In a last effort, Eric pulls a dagger hidden in his armor, but Kale grabs his hand and strikes the blade against the commander. Seeing his friend wounded, Mad Mardigon rushes to help him, but it is too late and Eric does not survive the injury. Overcome with rage, Mad Mardigon attacks Kale, placing a blade attached to his gauntlet. However, the general manages to dodge the attack and breaks the knight's blade in half. Despite this, Mad Mardigon manages to grab the sword of a fallen soldier, and with a spinning blow, he attacks Kale in the head, destroying part of his helmet. Shortly after, the warrior hears screams coming from the palace and rushes to help Sorka and the others, but Kale is still alive and blocks his path. The two enemies continue to fight until Mad Mardigon strikes his body with the broken blade of his gauntlet. This blow causes the villain to drop his sword, but he still offers resistance, disarming Mad Mardigon and squeezing him with his hands. The knight manages to break free, stepping on the hilt of the sword to lift it, and pulls Kale against the blade itself, defeating the general once and for all. Back at the palace, Rosiel and Baborda continue their confrontation with the sorceress punching the queen. However, she fights back and begins to squeeze Raziel until she is unconscious. After that, Bavmorda realizes that the child has disappeared music, and when she sees Willow trying to escape with her, the queen uses her magic to block the exit. With nowhere to go, Willow throws one of the magic acorns, which the queen manages to catch, but her arm begins to turn to stone. However, Baborda is very powerful and manages to reverse the spell, returning her arm to normal. Willow then hides with Alora behind the wreckage, but the queen orders him to hand over the child, or she will eliminate them both. With no choice, Willow approaches the queen holding the baby and tells her that he is a great wizard capable of taking the child to a place where she will not be able to find her. He then begins to recite a spell and immediately afterwards waves the cloth where Alora was, making the child disappear. Furious, the queen grabs her wand and tries to cast a spell against Willow, but ends up knocking over the magic potion used for the ritual. Because of this, a powerful lightning bolt strikes Bavorda, sending her soul into oblivion, where it will remain for all eternity. Finally, the battle is won, and Willow reveals that he used a magic trick, having left Allura hidden behind the rocks all along. Thanks to his intelligence, the little Neelan defeated the forces of evil. And the next day, everyone gathered to congratulate him on his courage. From that day on, Sorka and Mad Martigan would take care of Allura, and they promised to rule Tur as Sleen and Nagmar with kindness and justice. Finally, Raziel gives Willow a book of spells as a gift so that he can begin his journey as a wizard. Finally, the little Nelwyn says goodbye to everyone, especially Allura, and leaves to return to his home. Days later, Willow reunites with his friends and family. Welcomed by everyone in the village as a true hero, the little farmer has accomplished his mission. And now that he has the spell book, he can finally become the great wizard he is all. So, what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.